This video is brought to you by the dislike brigade of Foxen fans, thinking dislikes suppress a video calling out Foxen's misinformation, but giving it an even higher click-through rate in the process. Thank you. Today we had a beautiful episode, not action-oriented but highly focused on emotions of the two secondary characters, Alice and Eugeo, and they even included inner monologues of Eugeo for once to properly portray his dilemmas, as well as visualizing it extensively with a beautiful episode-specific new ending song by Reona, Beyond the Rainbow. Welcome everyone, it's me Gamerturk, and this is your most accurate source of Art Online information, Alicization Explained, featuring episode 19, The Seal of the Right Eye. As always, timestamps to individual plot points are in the description, as well as the pinned comment for easy navigation, but a quick news flash this week. But still, if you want to show your support, check it out, give it a like if you enjoy, all that jazz. It's also nice to see some people actually comparing what the two videos offer and come out to say they preferred mine with the in-depth information and still featuring no spoilers at all. But back to the episode, to give you a quick rundown with very minor drops here and there, a quite faithful episode, and the illustration quality in general is back to decent levels after the 1 week break. Great visualization of certain scenes explored, the inner monologues in the light novels, and a beautiful ending to top it off. But if you're new to my Explain series, what I do here is essentially provide you all the vital information on characters, events, action, lore from the source material, light novels, things that the anime did not convey properly or just did not have the time to, so you can still see the full picture. But then again, if you want to read the books for yourselves for the amazing experience, Amazon and Book Depository affiliate links are in the description down below, and the knowledge of Stacia awaits you there. As for my giveaway, until episode 24, so about for the next entire month, we have a spin-off giveaway due to the cover of volume 15 featuring significant spoilers, so it's time for more Deban. This month I'll be giving away the first 2 volumes of Sword Art Online Girls Ops spin-off manga. The giveaway link is in the description and the pinned comment. But without further ado, episode 19 covered chapter 11 parts 1 and 2 from volume 13 Alicization Dividing, so we got one more episode to cover in this book. Only 30 or so pages were covered, so once again it was natural that it turned out to be such a great adaptation, especially considering they even utilized the ending sequence for animation, finally providing an entry to Eugeo's feelings properly. Our journey continues on the ledge as Kirito shares the truth behind the Integrity Knights and the truth behind Alice Tsuberg to Alice Synthesis 30, on the edge of denouncing the Axiom Church, with the minions of darkness protecting the central cathedral being the last straw that made her curious. But there was one sentence that convinced her to listen to Kirito right before where the anime begins. Kirito had said, "I don't know if you'll believe it, but I will tell you what I believe to be the truth." That was the moment Alice realized there may have been different truths perceived by different people. With this sentence alone, Kirito had forced Alice to judge the situation herself instead of blindly believing what she had been told. This is reflected by what Kirito says right after, when Alice threatens to slay Kirito if she senses any misleading words from Kirito. He simply solidifies his point by stating that he is perfectly okay with the decision if it's a decision coming from Alice's heart, not via other means. The entire scene is about Alice judging the situation on her own and making her own decisions based on information she has learned so far, which plants the seeds for how Alice sees Kirito in the time they spent together. Right before the opening sequence though, we see memories of Alice Tsuberg when Alice crossed the line into the dark territory. Maybe this is just a mistake on the anime's part, or Alice is mainly remembering things based on what she has heard from Kirito so far, which is not much, but the memories only show Alice and Eugeo in this scene. But this is not entirely correct. The memories of Alice Tsuberg was sealed before Higa and Kikoka deleted the memories of Kirito from everyone in the world. In fact, the memory fragment that called upon Kirito and Eugeo back in episode 4 directly contacts Kirito for that specific reason, because those memories were isolated before the deletion had even happened. So if Alice Synthesis 30 is recalling the events here from her own vague memory, there's no reason for Kirito to not be in those memories. But a significant portion of this dialogue was cut from the scene, as Kirito explained that he assumed at least half of the 30 Integrity Knights were brought in as the champions of the 4 Empire Unification Tournament, much like the 31 Eldri was. He even went ahead to explain that they did not do anything to Eldri and that his name surfaced the memories of her mother, which caused him to destabilize completely, with Alice refusing the idea that some of the Integrity Knights may have been from those disgusting noble families. She was challenged once more by Kirito's words. It was the Axiom Church who solidified and preserved this caste system in the society. It was the Axiom Church that enabled those filthy nobles to claim power. While Alice claimed that there were plenty of workers here on the central cathedral, Kirito decided to keep his mouth shut for once, that they had climbed all this way in the tower without, seeing a single worker within the tower. He was under the assumption that, much like the elevator-chan, these cathedral workers were born and raised inside the cathedral to ensure their absolute obedience with not a single bit of knowledge of the real world outside. But Kirito didn't want to go off on a tangent and cause Alice to destabilize due to too much information. He moved on, so do we. He asked if she remembered bringing Eugeo and him to the prison the day before, and Alice replied with a resounding yes. Kirito and Eugeo were the first prisoners she brought to the tower, to her knowledge at the very least. But Kirito was already one step ahead, telling that Düsselberg did not remember bringing Alice from Rulid 8 years ago, and this was what led to the dialogue we see right after the opening, about Alice's entire past. And while Kirito explained her entire past, he was surprised at all the knowledge he had about Alice. He certainly had not heard this much of her story from Eugeo in such detail, but not dwelling on it too much, he just assumed his imagination may be adding some details here and there to spice up the story, mixing certain events with his real-life memories. But deep down, he knew these events, he remembered the sadness within of that one day. But speaking of real life, Kirito was certain of one more thing. The seed nexus given to him to be published by Kayaba himself was compatible with the network of the underworld. It was the basis of it. And knowing the virtual echo of Kayaba being alive somewhere inside the seed nexus, he couldn't help but think there was something more to the SAO incident, something beyond even what Kayaba hoped to achieve. And Kirito knew his answer was within underworld. And after all the talk about raising a human army to fend off the invaders from the Dark Territory, we actually do get to see how correct Eugeo was back inside with his assumptions. Eugeo knew Kirito would not be willing to sacrifice the Integrity Knight Alice Synthesis 30 to bring back Alice Tsuberg, and here on the ledge, Kirito specifically states that the person who will see Selka again is both the Synthesis 30 as well as the Tsuberg. Eugeo knew his partner very well, and even here on the ledge, Kirito was thinking about bringing both of them back rather than just Tsuberg, despite not knowing how that would even work. When he mentions this to Alice, she's not shaken as the knight accepts the reality that she's an invader stuck in Tsuberg's body, and having a sense of justice, she's willing to sacrifice herself for the original owner to return. But she asks for one last favor: to be able to see, to experience having a sister, a family. Kirito promises to take her to Rulid to see them again, but does not add anything else to his promise. He was not willing to trade one life for another, and certainly was not going to promise her that bit. But just as she was going to denounce her duty, the seal of the right eye stops her. Kirito had never encountered this seal before, mind you, as Eugeo's eye was already destroyed when he had arrived in Humbert and Rayos's room, but he instantly made the connection, and upon reading the letters, he immediately realized this was a system level block embedded in their minds, and that was most certainly not the implementation of the administrator. It had to be someone from the real world, someone from Wrath who implemented this block. But along with that revelation came others. Some of the Integrity Knights were converted from people who broke the taboo index, much like Eugeo had, but the fact that Alice had not gone through the seal before came with a lot of meaning. Eugeo had willingly broken the index to save Tiza and Ronya, but Alice, she crossed into the Dark Territory with a blank mind, unaware of the fact that she was breaking a taboo. But wasn't that the intention of Wrath in the first place? For Floodlights to have a breakthrough, to think for themselves? Why would they implement a mental block to prevent the Floodlights from making that decision? Questions came and went in Kirito's mind in these split seconds, and eventually he reached an answer. It surely was the objective of Kikoka to have Floodlights have this breakthrough, but nobody in Wrath in their right mind would implement a system block. Unless, Kirito thought, unless if somebody was intentionally attempting to delay the experiment. Kirito immediately cast aside Kayaba in the seed nexus, as he would wish to see the evolution of this world of floodlights in a natural manner. He would not have interfered either way. But this was a top secret military project hidden from the rest of the world. Japanese military possibly funded this project even without proper government approval and were directly going against their historic deals they had made with their strategic military allies, which narrowed down the possible espionage attempts by a lot. Maybe other enemy governments, other ally governments who were supplying Japan with their own software and military equipment to keep them away from achieving military sovereignty, other private military contractors not affiliated with other governments. The list was still too long and it was impossible to make a guess without any information whatsoever, which Kirito did not really have. But one thing was certain, the seal was not the design of Wrath really. But what was the ultimate motive of this sabotage? This surely gained them time, but didn't really accomplish anything else, so there had to be a goal to this time-stealing attempt. Maybe a counter-project somewhere else in the world, or even maybe technology theft. But Kirito was brought back with the pain on his shoulders as Alice clenched them stronger and stronger with pain or maybe even anger. As she swore to oppose the Axiom Church and the nameless gods from the other world, a burst of blood warmed Kirito's cheeks. Back in the central cathedral, Eugeo woke up from a nightmare. He wondered why the moon goddess Lunaria had presented him with such a weird dream sequence, and speaking of the gods, Eugeo's attention was pulled to the ceiling above, which seemed to depict the creation of the world, and one major detail really drew his attention. The pivotal figure of the event, the goddess of creation Stacia herself, was not present in this specific depiction of creation. Where she belonged, the center of the mural, was just a white, colorless void, which should give you an idea about Quinella's beliefs about the creation. If it wasn't the goddess of creation who created this world in her opinion, then who was it? I'll let you speculate on that, but we can clearly see some other figures here. The novels don't clearly state which goddess on the picture is which, but we have clear enough depictions to go in depth. Starting with the figure clearly available for us to see, that right there is Solus, the goddess of sun, clearly defined by her wings and her trademark bow. In fact, this is a clear cameo and a huge tease towards the identity of Solus, but that is beyond our reach for the purposes of this video. On the top right, around 2 o'clock, we can see another figure barely showing its wings, which means that is not the goddess of earth, Terraria. We never get to learn more about Lunaria, the goddess of moon, since she is not a major god by any means, but chances are that is her on the top right corner with her wings. And assuming from the placement of these two gods exactly matching 1/3 of the picture, it is reasonable to assume there is one more god depicted on the top left just outside of the frame without any wings, which simply shouts Terraria, the goddess of earth, as part of the creation myth of Underworld. Eugeo also mentions that he sees quote-unquote crystals embedded on the ceiling that look like stars, but we will get to those crystals in a bit. But I won't be talking too much on Eugeo's scenes. They are a beautiful adaptation of the novels, the entire visualization of the trippy events, so I'll go ahead and clarify the important bits and call it a day. First off, the voice that speaks to Eugeo right before Quinella wakes up. It sounds very similar to Tise, and I have seen many people assume it is Tise, but that is without a doubt Alice. Remember what the golden memory said back in episode 4 to Kirito. Kirito, Eugeo, I'll be waiting for you on top of the central cathedral. The top of the central cathedral is exactly where Quinella's room is, and it's on purpose that the anime immediately cuts to the ceiling to the shining eye of the bird. Well, that is one memory fragment doing its darn best to assist a childhood friend in need. The anime beautifully provides enough clues for you to realize if you're careful enough as to who was the one speaking to Eugeo. In fact, this was also teased in the opening sequence as well, with Alice's childhood memories being accompanied by a white bird, and Alice was reaching out to this bird. The second bit I want to extensively mention is the manipulation sequence of Quinella on Eugeo, specifically the scene where she brings Eugeo to the past. There was a time when a golden-haired friend of hers visited Eugeo during his daily chores. But surprisingly, on this one day leading up to his birthday, mind you, Alice had not yet shown herself. There was only just 3 days left for his birthday, but his partner in crime in all cases, the black-haired boy, hadn't even showed up either, much like Alice. Eugeo was getting worried, and after not wanting to wait, she headed to Alice's mom to ask her about her whereabouts, and the memory of the answer shook him for a second time. "She left early this morning. Kitty boy came along, so I was sure you'd be with them," said her mom. If they were not around, there was only one place where they could be, a sacred place filled with flowers within the forest, a small clearing called the Fairy Ring. As Eugeo's memories followed his younger version, with another undescribable emotion rising in his chest. And when he arrived at the clearing, he saw it. It was unmistakable, Alice with her golden hair and the boy, his best friend Kirito. He was convinced he met the boy in black hair just over 2 years ago in Rulit, but this memory, deep inside his heart, not tied to specific people but to an emotion, he knew the memory was real. It was impossible, but Eugeo knew he had lived this years ago. It's a lie, he wanted to shout, but he knew it was real. And before he could question the memory any further, he was brought back to Quinella's bed. As Quinella continued to manipulate his thoughts with cherry-picked memories and the scene as well as the voices of Alice and Kirito ringing in his ears, he knew exactly what was happening. He knew what the woman in front of her was attempting to do. He knew there was more to the memory he was shown. He knew there was more to sharing your love than requiring the same love in return. But as if he was under a spell, it was as if Quinella was draining his mental strength bit by bit. And with all the clashing thoughts in Eugeo's head, the voices of those he cared deeply about is being blocked off by an incredible visualization of a piety module. We end our episode in a beautiful, bittersweet way, with Reona singing Beyond the Rainbow as Eugeo presents all of his memories available for alteration. Remove core protection. So that brings us to the end of the video. I know I was a bit vague for the Eugeo and Quinella scenes, but you're gonna have to trust me on this. I really did push the explanations as much as I can without entering the spoiler territory. Certain aspects need to remain vague for a little bit longer until we actually get there. But of course, if you have questions, ask them in the comments. If your question is spoilers, make sure to include a spoiler warning and a couple of blank lines. I can be much more specific and answer those questions in my weekly Q&A video on Tuesday, if you ask the correct questions, of course. As for the episode itself, I absolutely loved it, especially the ending. To be honest, I'm a sucker for ending with music being used in an emotional way over the animation. I loved episode 9 for the exact same reason. It was one of the reasons why I found Darling in the Franxx to be emotionally impactful. The use of correct music just elevates the scene to a really great place. As for the Alice and Kirito scenes, I understand a big part of the "what's an integrity night" dialogue was cut. Most of that was already hinted at one way or another, so the audience did not really miss much there. The only downside is it looks as if Alice gets convinced a little too easy with such a short dialogue, as more than half their dialogue is cut here, but as the viewer you really did not miss on any major information. However, I wish Kirito's thought process regarding the system alert was actually included, even if it was for 1 or 2 simple sentences. Mainly the fact that he knows it could not have been Higa or Kiku and had to be a sabotage by someone else, as that was a major hint towards future events and a hint at the true nature of the seal itself that you guys have been asking about for a very long time now. But all in all, beautiful episode, what else can I say? As for episode 20 next week, it is titled Synthesis. You can probably guess where we are going with the context of this episode, but yeah, next episode will provide you a couple more twists to the story as Alice and Kirito will make it back to the inside of the central cathedral and track down the location of the Blue Rose Sword with a spell that was cut from episode 11 as well. And well, you already know how the scene already looks like back at the Great Bath a couple of floors below from floor 95's Morning Star Lookout. But if you made it this far, comment remove core protection down below so I can alter your memories to ensure you like all of my, to let me know that you made it this far, of course. But yeah, on a serious note, with the raid by the Fox and fans, that Dual Blades video of mine definitely can use some likes. Blind fanboyism is a funny thing, guys. Please never do follow me blindly like that. If I say something that doesn't feel correct, challenge me. If I confused someone due to lack of clarity in my explanation or remembered something wrong, that is a mistake I made that I need to correct. So never be afraid to question or criticize me. That's the only way I can produce better content for you guys. As always though, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, likes are always appreciated here, and on the Dual Blades video of course. Subscribe and ring the bell icon for the most accurate information on Sword Art Online, and a huge shout out to my patrons as always, and a special one to Tiffany, who has been a patron for 14 months and Candela for 10 months. I'll see you guys on Tuesday with my weekly Alicization Q&A. Until then, stay cool.